Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Let us continue with Surah An-Nisaa. بحول wa quwwatih. We are on ayah number 101. قال الله تعالى: وإذا ضربتم في الأرض فليس عليكم جناح أن تقصروا من الصلاة إن خفتم أن يفتنكم الذين كفروا إن الكافرين كانوا لكم عدوا مبينا. He says, when you travel in the land, ضربتم, meaning when you strike. They say when you're traveling on an animal, you strike the animal to make it move faster. And so that's why the word strike is used for traveling. It says, there is no sin upon you. Junah means sin. That you should taqsuru, from qasr, meaning to shorten something. That you should shorten from your salah if you fear that the kuffar are going to put you to trial. Here, trial means attack you or kill you, or perhaps ambush you and catch you unaware. He says, indeed the kuffar are to you, O Muslimin, open or plain enemies. Now the ayah appears to be telling us that you only shorten the salah when you're on a journey if you fear the kuffar are going to attack you. Certainly this was the case during the earlier days of the Medina period. But what about when the Muslims became powerful and did not fear any enemy attacking them? Such as is the case even now. When Muslims travel, they do not fear that they are going to be attacked by some enemies. However, we have an authentic narration in Sahih Muslim and others where Umar ibn al-Khattab was asked about this matter, that the Muslims are no longer in fear, so are they still allowed to shorten their prayer on a journey? Umar said that he wondered about the same thing and asked the Prophet about this. To which the Prophet replied, صَدَقَةٌ تَصَدَّقَ اللَّهُ بِهَا عَلَيْكُمْ فَقْبَلُوا صَدَقَتَهُ. This is a charity which Allah has given you, so accept His charity. Meaning even when you do not fear an ambush from the enemies, you're still allowed to shorten the prayer in a journey. So reflecting on this ayah, we immediately take that Allah Jalla wa Ala makes life easy for us by lightening the load with regards to acts of ibadah, which could become burdensome for us. Also from this ayah, we notice that Allah Jalla wa Ala says there is no sin upon you to shorten the salah. Many ulama have taken from this that if there is no sin upon you, it means that it is not obligatory to shorten the salah during the travel. However, it is not necessary the case that the shortening of the salah is not wajib, because Allah Jalla wa Ala uses similar language for the sa'i in the Hajj, where He says, Inna Safa wal Marwata min sha'airillah. Safa and Marwa are from the emblems of Allah. فَمَنْ حَجَّ الْبَيْتَ أَوْ اعْتَمَرَ. Whoever performs the Hajj or the Umrah, فَلَيْسَ عَلَيْهِ جُنَاحٌ أَنْ يَطَّوَّفَ بِهِمَا. Then there is no sin upon him to make the sa'i between them. So you see, he says there is no sin. But what is well known is that the sa'i is an absolute rukn of the Hajj and the Umrah. So it is more than just wajib, it is a rukn. As for the details of the shortening of the salah, then this is a fiqhi matter, so we do not delve into it here. Also we may take from the ayah that the kuffar are enemies to us. Even if this may not seem like it, Allah Jalla wa Ala knows everything which is hidden. And so the Muslim never lets his guard down against the kuffar. Ayah number 102. وَإِذَا كُنْتَ فِيهِمْ فَأَقَمْتَ لَهُمْ الصَّلَاةَ فَلْتَقُمْ طَائِفَةٌ مِّنْهُمْ مَعَكَ وَلْيَأْخُذُوا أَسْلِحَتَهُمْ فَإِذَا سَجَدُوا فَلْيَكُونُوا مِنْ وَرَائِكُمْ وَلْتَأْتِ طَائِفَةٌ أُخْرَى لَمْ يُصَلُّوا فَلْيُصَلُّوا مَعَكَ وَلْيَأْخُذُوا حِذْرَهُمْ وَأَسْلِحَتَهُمْ وَدَّ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا لَوْ تَغْفُلُونَ عَنْ أسلحتكم وأمتعتكم فيميلون عليكم ميلة واحدة ولا جناح عليكم إن كان بكم أذى من مطر أو كنتم مرضى أن تضعوا أسلحتكم وخذوا حذركم إن الله أعد للكافرين عذابا مهينا. So this ayah is speaking about the Salat al-Khawf, or the fear prayer. He says to the Prophet, وَإِذَا كُنْتَ فِيهِمْ, when you are amongst them, meaning your companions, and you establish the Salah for them, meaning you're leading them in the Salah, then let a ta'ifa, meaning a group or a party amongst them, stand with you, meaning behind you in the prayer, and let them take their weapons. So they're praying with their weapons in their hands. And the reason for that is because an attack from the enemy is likely, or a real possibility. So you may need to defend yourself even when you're praying. He says, فَإِذَا سَجَدُوا, when they have made the sajda. But what this really means is when they have finished the prayer. Because Allah Jalla wa Ala refers to the prayer by mentioning a part of it, which is the sajda in this case. Then he says, let the second group come and pray with you. But in this case, he says, let them take their precautions and their weapons. So asliha is the plural of silah, meaning weapon. And hidhr, meaning precaution. From hadhara yahdharu, meaning to be wary. So why does he mention hidhr on the second time round? Because the second time round, the danger is increased, because by that time, the enemies are observing you and they will see that you're in the middle of your prayer. And so by that time, they would have made preparations to attack you whilst you're in your prayer. He says that the kuffar would love wadda, from wadda yawaddu, to love, that you should be taghfuluna, from ghafala yaghfulu, to be oblivious or heedless, that you should be heedless about your weapons and your amti'a, plural of mata', meaning luggage or provisions, that you should be heedless of these things. Why is this? Because it will make you an easy target. If you do not have your weapons with you, they can ambush you, and what will you defend yourselves with when your enemies are carrying weapons? And when you are not looking after your provisions, they can easily be snatched. And your luggage will contain useful items for your defense and for your journey. So you need to look after those things which are valuable. He says, فَيَمِيلُونَ عَلَيْكُمْ مَيْلَةً وَاحِدَةً, that they should swoop down on you in a single swooping. Otherwise, مَا لَا يَمِيلُ means to incline to something. And then he says, there is no sin upon you if you have some annoyance or some burden from rain, or if you are ill, that you should leave your weapons. Because during rain, or if you are ill and weaker, it may be difficult for you to carry your weapons. So he says, fine, you do not need to carry weapons, but he says, وَخُذُوا حِذْرَكُمْ, and take your precautions though. So be aware of your surroundings, and do not be heedless. And then he finishes by saying that Allah indeed has prepared for the kafirin a humiliating torment. So muhin means that which humiliates. Now what is apparent from this ayah is that in this khawf prayer, the fear prayer, the Prophet, who is the Imam, is going to pray twice. Once with the first group, and the other group is keeping watch or keeping guard. Then they swap positions, and the Prophet prays with the second group, whilst the first group now watches and keeps guard. So that would mean that the second time the Prophet prays, that it would be a nafilah for him, whereas both of the groups behind him are praying their fard prayer. And indeed this is what happened in a place called Batn Nakhl. There is another way that this could be done as well, which happened on the battle of Dhatur Riqa', the one of the patches, where the companions had to make patches to cover their feet. And this would be that the Imam prays 1 rak'ah with the first group, and he stands up, and this is going to be a 2 rak'ah prayer. And then the first group finishes the prayer by themselves, and they say the salam, and they leave. Then the second group comes, they join the prayer, and the Imam prays 1 rak'ah with them, and he sits down because he has finished his 2 rak'at. However, the group behind him still have 1 rak'ah remaining, and they pray that by themselves, individually, yet still behind the Prophet, and then they sit down. Now the Imam and the Ma'mum all are sitting down, and they say the salam together. And it should also be known that the Salat al-Khawf has other descriptions as well, but the place for that is the fiqh presentations. As for the sabab al-nuzul, the reason why this ayah was sent down, it is reported in the Musnad of Ahmad that the Prophet and the companions were in a place called Usfan, which is near Mecca. The Mushrikun, under the command of Khalid ibn Walid, who was at that time still a Mushrik, they observed the Muslims praying the Dhuhr prayer. And so Khalid ibn Walid had an idea. He said, let us just wait for these Muslims to pray the Asr prayer. It is more beloved to them than their own children and their own selves. And when they pray, this will give us an ideal opportunity to attack them and have the element of surprise over them. However, Jibreel alayhi salam came down with the revelation that this is what the kuffar are planning to do, and the Salat al-Khawf was institutionalized. Reflecting on this ayah, we take the immediate lesson of how rational and balanced the Sharia is. That when there is genuine difficulty, it brings about ease, because it always remains practical. And this is just the rational thing to do, always remain practical. Why is this? Because we are living a practical life, not a theoretical one. We also find that the Imam is responsible for the Salat al-Jama'ah. Notice how he says, فَأَقَمْتَ لَهُمُ الصَّلَاةِ. You establish the prayer for them. This is the Imam. So the Imam needs to make sure that the prayer is done right in accordance with the Sunnah. He is responsible for the Salat al-Jama'ah, as he is establishing the prayer for the Ma'mumeen. We take a vital lesson from this ayah, that the Salat al-Jama'ah is an obligation for those men who are able to come to the masjid and are living close enough to it. Because if the Salat al-Jama'ah is not waived in a time of fear, then how about a time of non-fear? You would think, would you not, that perhaps in a time of fear, the Salat al-Jama'ah would not be wajib, and yet it is. You will notice also that both groups need to attend the Jama'ah behind the Prophet. Therefore, we cannot say it is just Fard Kifaya, rather it is Fard Ayn to perform the Salat al-Jama'ah. Okay, what about carrying your weapons in the Salat al-Khawf? We say this is an obligation and not just a recommendation or a permissibility, because he goes on to say that there is no sin upon you to drop your weapons if you are ill or there is other annoyance from rain or other than that. So he gives an exception to the general rule, which means the general rule is that it is an obligation to carry your weapons. We may also take from this ayah the virtue of the sajda. Why? Because Allah Jalla wa Ala uses the word sajda referring to the whole salah, because the sajda is the most virtuous position of the salah, because it is the most humble of all positions. And indeed it is a rukn of the salah as well, because you only use a rukn to refer to the whole thing. You're not going to use an optional act of the salah to refer to the whole salah. We may also take from this a fiqhi lesson that it is permissible to leave the jama'ah due to a necessary reason, because you see that the first group leaves the imam to keep guard, and that is a necessary reason. So if the reason is genuine, then yes, you can leave the imam. We may also take a general fiqhi lesson in that it is permissible to establish two Salat al-Jama'ah in one place due to a valid reason, because here the Prophet is praying twice, and so the Jama'at is being established twice, one for the first group and the second for the second group. And this could be the case in many masajid. If they are small and the demand is high, then you may need to establish multiple congregations, and this is especially the case for the Salat al-Jumu'ah and the Salat al-Eid. We also take from this ayah and the previous one that the kuffar are the enemies and they are looking for opportunities to wipe out the Muslimin, and in particular the Mujahideen. You may not feel this if you are not fighting in the way of Allah, but the moment you go on jihad and fight in the way of Allah, you will see the true colors of the kuffar manifesting. And in our modern times, we also see this enmity and hatred manifest. Do we not see the Zionists desiring to wipe out the Muslimin? Do we also not see the Mushrikun, in particular the Hindus, desiring to wipe out the Muslimin and to take over their lands? We also take that the Muslim is always on guard and always alert. And one must not be like how most people are nowadays when they're out and about. Their eyes are fixed on the screens of their mobile phones. This is not the correct way. The Quran tells us to always be on guard, particularly during a military expedition, but generally you should always be on guard and alert and keeping frosty. Ayah 103. فَإِذَا قَضَيْتُمْ الصَّلَاةَ فَاذْكُرُوا اللَّهَ قِيَامًا وَقُعُودًا وَعَلَى جُنُوبِكُمْ فَإِذَا اطْمَأْنَنْتُمْ فَأَقِيمُوا الصَّلَاةَ إِنَّ الصَّلَاةَ كَانَتْ عَلَى الْمُؤْمِنِينَ كِتَابًا مَوْقُوتًا. He says, when you have finished your salah, then remember Allah, whether it be standing or sitting or on your sides. So qiyaman and qu'udan, they are mansub al-fatha because they are a hal, as in qa'imina wa qa'idina. The prayer being referred to is, in the context, the fair prayer. So this ayah is talking about the dhikr after the salah, which is of course well known. And he's telling us to make the dhikr in any condition, whether you're standing, whether you're sitting down, even lying down on your side. Dhikr is made in all positions. He says, when you are itma'nantum, so itma'nan meaning feeling safe and secure. So when you are no longer in fear, he says, فَأَقِيمُوا الصَّلَاةِ, then establish the salah. Meaning to say, you do not pray it in 2 rak'at anymore, rather you pray it 4 rak'at. But based upon this, the ayah would have to be understood that when you are not on a journey anymore, so when you have peace and security, as in to say you are resident in your town and not on a journey. However, if it is interpreted to mean when you are feeling safe from the enemy, then aqimus salah would have to mean then perform the salah more fully in terms of the ruku' and the sajda and the khushu' and so on, because you cannot really perform these things to the fullest extent when you are in fear. Definitely your khushu' will not be the same. He says, indeed the salah is enjoined on the believers at fixed hours. Kitaban is mansub al-fatha because it is a khabar of kana. And the word kitab means maktub, meaning written, or in this case ordained. So it is mawqutan, it is a timed ordainment, meaning at fixed times. Reflecting on this ayah, we take that the dhikr can be done in any position. It is not necessary that you be sitting down. If you want to stand up because you need to do so, or you want to walk around, or maybe you need to lie down, that's all well and good. The dhikr can be done in all positions. We take that the dhikr is done after the salah, so that is the proper time for adhkar. As for dua, the better time is during the salah, before you say the salam, because that is a more sacred time. We take that the prayers have a fixed time which must be observed, and it is impossible not to pray as long as you are conscious. So even if you have no clothes or no water to make wudu, or even no dust and the like to make tayammum, you can still pray in whatever condition you are in. Even if you are tied up to a pole and you cannot make all the movements, you can still pray by indication and by intention. But the point is, it must be done on time. Intentionally praying the prayer out of its time would mean that your prayer is invalid, and it would count as a nafilah at best. We also notice that he says that the salah is ordained on the mu'mineen. It should be noted that it is also ordained on the kafirin as well, only it will not be accepted from them until they embrace al-Islam. However, they will be punished for not performing the salah in the akhirah. Ayah 104. وَلَا تَهِنُوا فِي ابْتِغَاءِ الْقَوْمِ إِن تَكُونُوا تَعْلَمُونَ فَإِنَّهُمْ يَعْلَمُونَ كَمَا تَعْلَمُونَ وَتَرْجُونَ مِنْ اللَّهِ مَا لَا يَرْجُونَ وَكَانَ اللَّهُ عَلِيمًا حَكِيمًا. He says, وَلَا تَهِنُوا, from wahana, yahinu, wahnan, to become weak or to lose vigor and lose energy. Do not wane, he says, in your ibtigha, pursuit of your enemies. So you're chasing the enemy. The word uses al-qawm, meaning the people. It refers to your enemies. He says, if you are ta'lamuna, in pain, from alam, then they are also suffering a pain or hardships, just like you are suffering hardships. وَتَرْجُونَ from raja yarju, raja'an, but you hope from Allah what they do not hope, meaning the reward in the akhirah. And Allah was ever the knowing, the wise. As for his name Hakim, we have spoken about this. It means Hakim, Hakim, and Muhkim, the one who is wise, the one who is a judge, and the one who does things perfectly well. The sabab al-nuzul of this ayah is that after the Muslims suffered a heavy loss at the battle of Uhud, the Prophet received news that Abu Sufyan, at that time a mushrik, was planning to make a return to Medina to kill off any Muslimin. And so the Prophet made preparations to meet Abu Sufyan, but the Muslims complained that they have suffered a heavy loss and they cannot pursue their enemies. To which Allah Jalla wa Ala sent down this ayah. So reflecting on this ayah, we find the Quran encouraging the Muslimin to fight the kuffar and to have mental strength, even if you are suffering, to ignore your pain and ignore the suffering and focus on the task at hand and the reward of this task at hand. So this requires not just physical strength but mental strength, because he tells us do not wane and do not become cowardly, do not become weakened. So this requires mental strength, and such is the mu'min. He is mentally strong. This ayah teaches us that both the Muslim and the kafir are humans. They are going to suffer. However, what sets the mu'min apart is that he hopes in reward from Allah Jalla wa Ala what the kafir cannot hope. And this hope is not wishful thinking like the Christians have. The Christians believe they're going to heaven. This is wishful thinking. Rather, hope is accompanied with action. You cannot hope for reward if you're not working for it. Whereas the Christians are just hoping for their heaven, and there's nothing in Christianity that teaches them to actually work for heaven. There's no sense of ibadah. There is simply these 10 commandments which tell them not to commit certain sins. But there's nothing proactive in Christianity, like some sort of proactive ibadah. Nothing of that sort is ordained. At best, it is optional. If they want to do it, they can. If not, then not. So this is where the Christians have wishful thinking, whereas the Muslim has genuine hope. And the difference is action or a'mal. We also take from this ayah the 2 names of Allah Jalla wa Ala, and that we find that He is all knowledgeable in that which He legislates and all wise in His hukum, in all that which He legislates, whether it be a universal matter or a shar'i matter. هذا والله أعلم.